Welcome and thank you for joining us for this webinar. My name is Raul Guzman. I'm the director of the OSHA Education Center at the California State University, Dominguez Hills. We are part of a national network of nonprofit organizations authorized by OSHA to deliver occupational safety and health training to workers, supervisors, employers, and safety professionals. Currently, there are 35 OSHA education centers around the United States. To find the OSHA Education Center close to you, you can click on the link in the chat or find one on the map on the screen. Before we get started, I would like to go over some housekeeping items. Please ask your questions using the Q&A function. We will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. The chat will be kept open for correspondence between participants and webinar organizers. The webinar will be recorded and made available. A link will be provided to all registrants. The slides from today's presentation will be available as a PDF after the webinar as well, and a link will be provided to all registrants. So now I will turn it over to Hillary Warren, our moderator, who will introduce today's subject matter experts. Thank you.
Thanks, Raul. Welcome to you all. We're really glad to have you here. My name is Hillary Warren. I'm the director of the OSHA Training Institute Education Center at Georgia Tech. And it's my privilege to introduce our speaker today. Bill Foster, despite not looking, a day over 30,
right,
has almost 40 years of experience in managing safety compliance and emergency response for a variety of industries, including a background in chemical manufacturing. In 2001, Bill founded Impact Safety Systems in Augusta, Georgia, where he's able to utilize his wealth of knowledge on fire protection, hazardous materials, emergency response, and today's topic, permit required confined space rescue, to assist companies in managing their most hazardous activities. Does he have stories to tell? His team at Impact Safety serves as standby confined space rescue team. So I'm looking forward to hearing his suggested ways that employers can plan in advance for this critical component of a confined space program. Bill, welcome.
thank you, Hillary. I guess the first thing I'd like to say is it's an honor to be here. And the second thing is I don't know everything. So let's work through this together. Some of the things that we see in confined space world is that people don't really know what a confined space is. How many times have you ever heard one way in, one way out? Has nothing to do with the definition. So we're going to look at the OSHA definitions. So you see the question in front of you, what is a confined space? Is it a space small, dark, dangerous? Is it a space that requires a permit? Is it a space that's hard to get in and out of? Or just one that someone could enter as a part of their normal job? So let's look at the actual definition from the OSHA standard. I don't like giving my opinion. When someone asks me a question, if I don't know the answer, I will find it in the standard and give them the direct answer, okay? So as we step through this presentation, we're going to look at the OSHA definition, and the first part of the answer of what is a confined space is simply you have to be able to bodily enter it to perform work. And I like to use examples. There was a facility in Augusta, had a worker opened an 8-inch by 14-inch inspection plate. Looked inside, put his hand in the opening, and his arm was amputated. That was not a confined space problem, right? So he should have never put his hand in that hole without having the equipment shut down and locked out. So the first part of the definition just simply means that you have to have an opening large enough and so configured that the worker can bodily enter to perform work. You have to be able to get your entire body through the opening and have a cavity in the space that's large enough for you to be able to get into and do your work. So you have to be able to bodily enter it to perform work. You have to have a limited or restricted means of entry or exit, and it not be made for someone to work in all the time. You must say yes to all three of those parts of the definition in order for it to be a confined space. So this is the first part of the definition, right? You must say yes to large enough to enter. You must say yes to the second bullet point here, which just says you have to be restricted on how you would get in or out. You have to twist, contort your body, climb. There's just restriction. How large is the manway? How easy is it to access the space? And then the third part is just simply not meant for someone to be working in that space all the time. Again, you must say yes to all three parts of this definition, or you do not have a confined space. Once you've determined that you have a confined space, then you have to make the determination, is that space permit required? If we can step to the definition, this is what is really important. You should be able to step in front of any questionable space and answer the first three questions. And if you answer yes to those, then you answer yes to any one of these. This is one of, I guess, my big concerns after doing this for over 40 years. A hazardous atmosphere. The number one killer of people entering confined spaces every year is a hazardous atmosphere. But it's actually 70% of deaths every year in confined spaces are caused by some kind of a problem with the atmosphere. So if you look at it from a safety standpoint, we could save 70% of the lives lost every year in a confined space just simply by testing the atmosphere before we allow them to go in. 70% of lives could be saved just by doing an atmospheric test. The second thing that will make a confined space permit required is engulfment. The engulfment's pretty simple. It's being covered over by liquid or finely divided solids. If you can't swim, you fall into a swimming pool, you're engulfed in the water and you will die. If you stand on grain in a grain silo, just the rhythm of your heart beating is enough vibration, it will cause you to sink into the grain, you will be engulfed by the grain, and you will suffocate and die. So two big things, if it has a potential for a hazardous atmosphere or potential for engulfment, and the third is a potential for entrapment. Now, an internal configuration such that an entrant could be trapped or asphyxiated by inwardly converging walls or a floor which slopes downward and tapers to a smaller cross section. That's what the standard says. What it really means is if you have an entrant that is unresponsive, they're not responding to calls from the attendant or from anyone else. And if you try to pull them out with their lifeline, or you try to winch them out with their cable, but there's something in between where they are and where you are as the rescue person or the attendant, then if they get hung up on something, then you have to go in to get them. That's a permit required confined space. So the last one, some people call it the catch-all, but it's really pretty significant issues. Any other serious safety or health hazard. If you go into a sanitary sewer lift station, well, then you have biological hazards. It may be something that the worker brings in with them, like an electrical tool that's not on a ground fault circuit interrupter. It could be a cutting torch, anything that's going to present a safety or health hazard to the entrant. So that's the OSHA definition. So let's go a little bit further into that. Just examples, and this is in the OSHA General Industry Standard, and it talks about tanks and vessels and silos and hoppers and pits and vaults and bins, and many times conveyors, things that would be meeting the definition of a confined space. Sewer systems came up on the construction confined space standard that came out in August of 2015. And they basically OSHA took the general industry standard and mirrored it and then clarified some of the questions that have been there for all the time. All right. Things like a sewer system and the definition of that and the clarity that they brought with the new standard. So if you're installing or upgrading a manhole, you're altering or upgrading sewer lines, making non-structural upgrades, doing demolition work, if you're in a sewer system, then that you are entering a permit required confined space, provided that it meets the definitions that we've already reviewed. I'd like to ask a question that's maybe kind of strange because I don't know the answer to it. Have you ever had an instructor that asked a question that he didn't know the answer to? Well, here's my question. How do you get into the attic of your house? See why I don't know the answer to that? It'd be a little weird if I did, right? So to get into the attic of my home, I go to the second floor landing. I take my wife's, let's just call them treasures, out of the closet. And there's a ladder built into the back of the closet and a little hole, scuttle hole panel that I remove. And so I climb the ladder and I enter my attic. I can bodily enter it to perform work. OSHA says ladder access is restrictive. So I'm restricted on how I would get into that space. And it's certainly not meant for me to live in, be in, stay in all the time. So my attic is a confined space. If you have a pull down stairway, OSHA says stairway is not restrictive. So even though you can bodily enter it to do work and you're not going to live in it, be in it, stay in it all the time, then you're not saying yes to the restriction part. You have to say yes to all three parts in order to be a confined space. So can you always say attics are confined spaces? Crawl spaces are no different. There's many different ways that you can enter a crawl space in your home. So the crawl space is that part underneath your home that you can go into. We have some older homes here. I'm in Augusta, Georgia, and we have some of the older antebellum type homes that you walk through a full-size door and you walk into the basement basically of the home, and there really is no crawl space. It's just wide open. That's not restrictive. But if you have to take the panel door off and you have to get down on your hands and knees and crawl or bend or twist, contort your body, then you would be saying, yes, I can get into it to do work, limited how I would get in or out, and certainly not be meant for someone to work in all the time. One of the things that we're seeing in crawl spaces and attics are the hazards that are there that have never really been truly addressed. So could we have an atmospheric hazard? I would think mostly that would be something that the worker would bring in with them. Electrocution, if you running power tools and you have missing the ground pin, you're not on a GFCI, or you have exposed wiring that someone has fixed their own home wiring, then you may have an electrocution hazard. Standing water, poor lighting, you can see this on the screen. Structural collapse. Insulation can be a respiratory hazard. And it could be something that is just as bad or maybe worse, would be mold. Black mold in crawl spaces under houses is a real problem. And it comes, as you know, from water leaks and things over years or whatever. So we need to kind of widen our view of what is a confined space and how do I know it's a confined space? And again, the simple thing is go by the definition. When we're out in a plant to do an assessment, we'll simply do that exact thing. We've got a form that we use. We'll go through and we'll say, Can I bodily enter it? Yes, I can. Am I restricted? Yes, I am. Is it meant for me to be in all the time? No, it's not. And then we go over to the definition of the permit required confined space and just simply answer those questions. So things that aren't just your typical cookie cutter definitions or thoughts of confined spaces like your pits, your silos, your vaults, your hoppers. You've got to widen your view a little bit. All right, so OSHA general industry standards been around since the middle 90s, and that's 29 CFR 1910-146. I would bet we've probably all read it. We probably all understand it. And if you read it again, you'll find it doesn't say one way in, one way out anywhere in the standard. That's not part of that definition. So why did they come out with a construction standard? Again, that came out in August of 2015. So we've been working with it for 10 years now. And it's basically, there's basically 5 areas that OSHA tried to really just clarify. On a construction site, you may have multiple contractors all trying to get into the same area to do their work. They're on a construction, you have to have good communication. That's the first thing that the construction confined space standard really emphasized was we need to make sure that that we have between the host and the controlling employer and the employer that's just putting the boots on the ground, putting people at elevation, putting people in confined spaces, bringing in welders, whatever they're doing, we have to have a better way to communicate and share the concerns and the hazards with anybody that could potentially be stepping into that space or even just working around it. We don't want someone starting up a welding machine right next to the ventilation blower that's blowing fresh air into the confined space for the other contractor that they're working right on top of each other. So one of the biggest things was a detailed communication method between all the contractors and subcontractors that are on that site. Another big thing is we're not going through the training requirements, but if you're the entrant, an attendant, an entry supervisor, or a rescue person, then for general industry, you have to be trained. The construction standard never even addresses the position of entry supervisor. In general industry, that position is actually the signature on the permit that allows the work to start and the signature on the permit that cancels the permit when the job is over or there's some reason to cancel. The construction standard requires a competent person to be in that level. So the general industry standard really just talks about, you've got to do an evaluation of your work site. You've got to determine whether you have confined spaces and whether or not they're permit required. So that's really simple. Do I have a confined space? Does it meet the definition? But it doesn't say, the general industry standard does not say who has to do that evaluation. So the construction standard is bringing up the term of a competent person. Competent person has knowledge, skills, experience, and the biggest thing I believe that they have is authority. So if you don't have authority, whatever your topic is, you're not a competent person. All right, so the site evaluation and the construction standard for the last 10 years requires a competent person, okay? Well, one of the things, I guess this is another one of my little pet peeves, when it gets down to atmospheric monitoring, and again, how important is that? We could save 70% of the lives. When it gets down to the atmospheric monitoring, the construction standard says continuous atmospheric monitoring is required at all times. I wish they'd have put the period right there, but they didn't. So continuous atmospheric monitoring is required at all times when possible. You know, I'm from Georgia, but what the heck does that mean? You know, I mean, do you have to do continuous monitoring or do you not? If they, you know, so continuous monitoring, unless you can prove that it's not feasible to use continuous monitoring. All right, you have to have some way, if you're doing underground work, tying in a new stormwater system to an existing stormwater system. Well, there's no way to lock that out. There's no way to stop a flood water that's coming from a storm that's several miles up the road that you know really nothing about, from flooding down through the stormwater pipe and engulfing the workers. So the new construction standard talks about having some early warning system that's in place to be able to identify that that hazard is coming in time for the workers to be able to get out. So whatever you come up with on that, it could be a float system that you put in that has some type of an audible alarm. It could be someone standing by at the manhole covers up the road to say, hey, get out, the water's getting higher, okay? To me, the two biggest things are the requirement to have a competent person and the requirement or the ability, that's a better term, I think, the ability of the competent person to be able to suspend the permit in an emergency where the general industry standard requires that you cancel the permit. And they even go to, in the general industry standard even goes to the point of saying, if there is a failure of your atmospheric monitoring equipment, that's an emergency. Your permit's canceled. If there is a failure of any of your hazard control equipment, like your ventilation fan, that's a cancellation, right? That's an emergency, requires a cancellation. You can fix the problem, you can reissue a new permit. In the construction standard, it actually allows the competent person to make the decision of whether or not to cancel the permit in an emergency or suspend the permit and then reissue the same permit. So I think probably spent more time on this slide than I was supposed to, but I think it's good to understand, why are you under the construction standard or are you under general industry? And that just simply depends on what type work you're doing. You could be in a general industry facility and be under the construction standard if you're doing construction type work. Whether you're looking at confined spaces or whether we're talking about work at elevation and fall protection, I think one of the biggest things that is totally ignored by most companies is an actual emergency plan if somebody is suspended in their harness and for fall protection, or if they're down in the confined space and you think, well, I'll call 911. Or maybe you have your own on-site rescue team, or maybe you use a standby service like Impact Safety. And it really depends on what you do and how you do it. Once you've determined that you have a permit required confined space, then you need to determine how would we rescue them if we needed to rescue them? How are we going to get them out? So entrance in confined spaces could quickly be overcome. One of the things that both standards require is the attendant be able to communicate with the entrant. There's no requirement in either standard that they be able to visually have line of sight to the entrant. So they have to be able to just talk to them. And whatever that method of communication is, it just has to be effective. So if I'm in the space and I start to have problems, I have to be trained that my first response has to be to call for help as I'm moving toward the entry point. So there's things in confined spaces that 1 or 2 breaths could put you down and you may never get back up. Again, statistics, what we safety people deal with a lot, 70% of fatalities in confined spaces are called would-be rescuers. Sadly, it's the same percentage for the cause of those deaths as the atmospheric hazards. So pre-plan. Figure out how you're going to get them out before you let them go in, okay? And on to the next slide, there's a couple of different types of rescue. The rescue is the personnel designated to rescue employees from the permit space. That could be your in-house emergency response team. They can be an outside rescue service, or they could be a combination. That outside rescue service could be your fire department, or it could be a contract team that you have coming in. It could be a combination of any of the three, really, okay? Self-rescue, obviously, is absolutely the best method. Self-rescue would be affected simply by the entrant realizing that there's something going on, the way they feel, what they see, what they hear in the space, and they go to the entry point and get themselves out. Or the attendant realizes that as they're communicating with the entrant that there's a need for that worker to come out. Maybe they see something on the outside of the space that would cause some kind of a problem to the entrant. So that's self-rescue. I'm going to skip down to non-entry rescue. Non-entry rescue would be conducted by the attendant. If they're attached to a cable system and a tripod and a winch, maybe they can just crank the winch, get them out. Or if they have a rope system and they can use a mechanical advantage, non-motorized mechanical advantage to get the workers out, then that's great. Entry is the most dangerous thing that we do. I've been dealing with emergency response for over 45 years, and the only thing more dangerous than just a confined space entry rescue is if you have to deal with a rescue that's on a scaffold in a confined space and you're dealing with an elevated work platform in a confined space. To me, there's nothing more difficult than that. So there's plenty of options as we go on. So self-rescue is initiated by the entrant or the attendant. The worker removes himself. No entry by the rescuer is required. The entrant must know the reasons. And this is something that's common, the one thing that's common to every position in a confined space job. The attendant, the entrant, the entry supervisor or competent person, and the rescue team, everyone has to understand the hazards for that space that they're entering so that they can know how to overcome or how to eliminate the hazard. Entry, most difficult, requires a lot more training, requires a lot of equipment, a lot of coordination. And as we keep going on the slides, we'll see that the entry rescue, they have to have a full body harness attached to a retrieval system. For non-entry rescue, it's initiated by the attendant. If you have more than one person working, it's difficult if the lines or ropes get tangled up. Difficult when the entrant's not directly in line of sight or is around different type of obstacles, pumps, pipes, blender screws, agitators, agitator blades, whatever it is. An employer who designates rescue and emergency services shall, and I put the standard reference in here because a lot of times, we say things and someone may think, well, that's just Bill Foster's opinion. You're not going to get my opinion because my opinion doesn't matter to you. What you're going to get from me is the standard, okay? The standard requires that the host or the owner evaluate the rescuer's ability to respond in a timely manner. Now, that's one of those things that gets put in perspective, I guess. If you're the one in the space having the problem, what's a timely manner for you, right? I want somebody to get me out right then. So OSHA says that depending on the hazards, a timely manner could vary, okay? There's one time where the slide, 1910-134 is the respiratory protection standard, and it requires immediate action if the entrant and the attendant, or if the entrant and the rescue team would have to be on supplied breathing air, either a supplied air respirator or a self-contained breathing apparatus. If they have to be on breathing air because of an IDLH atmosphere, then the rescue team must be available for immediate action. Immediate action means that they're right there on the scene, they're geared up, their PPE is right, everything's good, all the equipment's there, ready to go. All right, and this is just a picture of a supplied air. One that's with a picture on the left, it shows the escape bottle, and then it shows the airline hose that would go out to a cascade system that would supply unlimited amount of air. And the picture on the right is a self-contained breathing apparatus. And there's, we're not going to promote one brand over another. There's several different brands, and I think it's just like my Ford truck is just as good as your Chevrolet or your GMC or your Toyota. As long as I take care of it and you take care of yours, they should all last. So I don't promote one brand of anything over another. All right, so emergency services. Again, this is just a quote from the standard. Employers who rely on local emergency services for a response, arrange for responders to give their employer advance notice if they'll be unable to respond for a period of time. So if your plan is 911, the first thing I would suggest to you is call the non-emergency number for your 911 dispatch and ask them if they are willing to do confined space rescue. And make sure that they understand if they say yes, what they're saying yes to. All right. So you made an agreement, 911 is going to be your rescue team. You tell them that in the morning, we're starting an entry at 9 a.m. and are you on station? They say, yes, we're good to go. We'll be your rescue team. Then if they get called off of that, out of their station house to go on any other type of call, then they have to call you and tell you, we're no longer available for you. Stop all of your work until we're back on station and we're ready to provide you the service again. So that's really the biggest problem I know with using 911 as your rescue team. It's simply, it's not because they're not smart enough, because they certainly are. They have the equipment. They most of the time have training and equipment and really good people. They just don't have the manpower typically to perform that service. One of the things you can look at is, how close, what's the closest response time, right? From the closest fire department, ambulance service, or whatever to your facility. And that should be just questions that you normally ask in any facility. All right, an employer who designates rescue and emergency services shall evaluate their ability and proficiency to function appropriately while rescuing the entrants. So I think one of the key terms there is proficiency. When we talk about training, how much training do you have to do to be proficient to use rescue equipment, use rescue techniques? Okay. Employer shall select a rescue team that has the capability to reach the victims within a time frame that's appropriate. They're equipped for and proficient in performing the needed rescue service. And again, the standard reference are under both of those lines. Whoever your rescue team is, whoever you choose, each member has to practice making rescues at least once every 12 months. And they really have to practice enough to be able to demonstrate competency and to be proficient. Yeah, that's not a real person. That's one of our old mannequins. We call him Rock Man because he's kind of been through probably more than he needed to. Been through a few fires, okay? So your rescue team has to be trained in first aid and CPR. And I would also add, even though the standard doesn't, first aid, CPR, and AEDs. And at least one member, everybody's been trained. Maybe they haven't gone through their refresher training and their cards are outdated, but at least one person on the team has to hold current certification. Okay. So some equipment experiences. I don't know how well you can see the equipment in our background here. I think we'll pan a little bit about that. And we've got a David arm, that's the yellow device on the back, and we've got tripods set up, and we've got that's one of our mannequins. I actually tried to get through my refresher class for OTI construction trainer with my mannequin sitting in my office chair with a hard hat and glasses on, but Hillary wouldn't go for it. She told me I had to be there. Okay. So he didn't fool anybody. But, just having the right equipment, and there's no one piece of equipment that's going to be good for everything. You can have a lot of equipment. Every harness, it's not one size fits all. It's everything. Okay, this just a couple of pictures. This was actually 2 weeks ago. Well, this is a new plant. They're not in production yet, but the big filter housing that you see in the back, we set up a 4-to-1 hauling system with a retrieval line from the ground where we had plenty of room to work, and then we went up about 45, 50 feet up the side of that column and went into a very tight manhole, manway, and everything from our side, we're actually waiting on, that's why guys are sitting around, we're waiting for the contractor to actually come over and do the work. So just a picture of that. And I think the next slide is a little bit different. This one, it's permit required. You can see it's very tight. Every confined space is different. That's why it's difficult also for the fire department to come in and not know anything about your facility and come in and say, yeah, oh, well, we'll be your rescue team. That you need to invite them in. If that's your plan, get them in, let them see your confined spaces. And by the OSHA standard, they have the right to say, before you allow anyone to go in here, we're going to practice one time to make sure that we have the right equipment, that we have the right skills and knowledge, people and training to be able to effect a rescue in this facility. So that's just a picture of not a very good picture, but it's a picture of a really tight entry point. Okay. This one is not so tight. This was a really big open vessel. The way to get in was very restrictive, but once he went through the manway and got past some of the structural pieces that were right inside the manway, we lowered him into the bottom of the vessel, and he's doing an inspection and doing his job, and then we raise him out and get him out. This one, it's really, really sad to me how many videos you can pull up on YouTube, or you scroll, just Google, how many times we can look at fatalities that have occurred. Employee number one entered a sewer vault 15 to 20 feet deep to remove a plug. So this is a sewer entry. Collapsed immediately, 6 inches of water or unidentified liquid, that's what it says at the bottom of the sewer vault. And employee number two realized that his co-worker was in distress and went in to assist the first worker. The second one is also collapsed at the bottom of the sewer vault. The third attempted to provide assistance, but when he started in, or she started in, they felt bad, so they came back out, and then fire and EMS arrived on the scene, and you can see the results on the next screen. It was not as bad as it could have been. The employee number two regained consciousness, was able to assist in the rescue. Employee number one and number three got out of the vault. All three employees were transported. Unfortunately, the first employee later died at the hospital, and I don't know if he drowned from the liquid in the bottom. I don't know if it was an atmospheric. I don't know what caused his death, but sadly, it was simply what caused his death was simply they didn't prepare the space to start with. They didn't have the proper procedures in place and the proper equipment to determine what the hazards were. So fortunately, employee number 2 and 3 were treated, hospitalized, and released the following days. One of the things we always do as safety professionals, we come back and we do an incident investigation. We try to figure out what went right, what went wrong. And a lot of times I think those investigations are trying to point at somebody of, well, you're the one that messed this up, or, this is what happened. And to me, most of the time, it should come all the way back to a management failure where they didn't provide the right training. They didn't provide the right equipment. They didn't provide enough training for the workers to be proficient. And one of the videos that you can pull up on YouTube is a billboard in Texas where a worker was redoing the fascia of the billboard and had a full body harness on, had his lanyard on, all the good fall protection. He slipped and fell, and as he was hanging, don't know if he didn't have his leg straps on tight or if he loosened them to try to readjust, because that's where it's like a tourniquet. But he ended up losing his leg straps and having to hold on to his harness by his upper body strength. The fire department came, and even though they had been trained in high angle rescue, they weren't, the captain of the fire department that responded wasn't confident enough in his team to attempt a rescue at an elevation. So they did not. The next in company came in, and by the time they got everything rigged and set up and got up to him, the worker had lost his upper body strength and fallen to his death. So what went right, what went wrong is going to be different on every scenario that we look at. So what preventative actions could be taken is going to be different. Always doing an evaluation and classification, get the information, make sure that, and a lot of the companies that we're dealing with is simply well, we're not going to put our employees in, we're going to use a contractor. It should not make any difference at all whose life you're putting at risk, whether it's your own in-house employee or a contractor that gave you the lowest bid. Everyone has the same right to live. You shouldn't have to be exposed to hazards that could kill you on your job site. All right, so evaluation, classification, that information exchange between the employer and whoever is doing the work. Preventative actions, ventilation, hazard isolation, having your early warning systems. Again, I mean, I can't get past this. 70% of confined space deaths would be prevented had we just used a meter before they went in. So how critical is having your atmospheric monitor that's going to monitor for what your hazards are, having it calibrated correctly, having it on scene, having the batteries charged, having it, the workers that are going to use it understand how it works. Rescue capacity, training, all critical parts of preventative actions. So I don't know how we're doing on time, but I've come to the point where we can ask questions. So if you want to put your questions in the Q&A box, and maybe we can pull that up.
Awesome, Bill.
Hillary, I have a bunch of questions here ready to go with Bill
Sorry.
here.
Let's do it.
All right, so I tried to keep track of everybody, but a lot of talk on the general industry and construction side of things. And there's a couple questions I want to make sure that they were answered. So the first one was just explain the difference. Is there a specific place they can go to find that difference? Or was it just based on your PowerPoint that you shared?
Okay, I'm sorry, to find the difference in what?
The construction and general industry confined space standards.
Okay, my official answer is come to the Georgia Tech OSHA 2264 permit required confined space training, and we'll be glad to go. Just kidding.
I got it. I got it.
So the standard is what we go to.
Okay. I guess they were meaning like if there was a one spot that showed the differences between the two. I think that's what they were looking, as opposed to going to the 1910 and then to the 1926.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the federal states versus state plans. And I've never seen a book that said South Carolina went above here, where North Carolina went. I've never seen a document that compares them, that compares general and construction.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm trying to go through, I have at least 50 some questions here, so I'm trying to kind of put things together and ask questions for you. And then there was a lot with permit required confined space. At what point do we consider it to have a potential? Because some confined spaces will always have the potential depending on how you understand potential, such as a newly installed manhole. Does that have a potential to contain a hazardous atmosphere in order to be considered a permit required confined space?
Okay, that's an excellent question. If it's PVC piping and they've used solvents and glues and things to put the pipe together, then that would show up in your meter. So use your atmospheric monitor to determine if you have an atmospheric hazard. Concrete, I would think more silica exposure potential and cut concrete and piping and things. So it may not be something that's really very obvious, but it's where the standard says a potential or a known hazard. how do you determine that there's a potential hazard? It's a good question. I don't know that I can answer it, but it's a good question.
Okay, well, continuing on with the monitoring and talking it for, if you do atmospheric testing and it comes back clean, do you still need to continuously monitor if there is no feasible reason for a hazardous atmosphere to occur?
Okay, in the construction standard, it requires continuous monitoring. General industry allows periodic monitoring, but it doesn't really state what that means. It doesn't say that you have to test and document every 30 minutes or every hour. It doesn't really state that, but you have to do monitoring either periodic or continuous, depending if you're general industry, construction, and what the hazard potential is.
Okay. Then going into rescue, a lot of talk about rescue as well. The questions are, and you kind of, you talked about this, about relying on 911 as your rescue plan. Some people were asking, does it have to be a fire department, or like, is there other options if there's not that as a choice?
Okay, fire department, number one, verify with your fire department that they are trained, equipped, and willing to be your rescue team. You have the opportunity to train in-house people, your production operators, your maintenance crew, your I&E techs, whoever, and get a group. And I recommend you get a group that volunteer to do it and not a group that's voluntold. Rescue it in something that everybody wants to do, okay? The other option would be to use a company that provides a rescue service and contract with them. All right, so to me, if a company has, they only do 10 or 12 permit entries in a year, contract the service. If you do 10 or 12 a week, you need to have an in-house train. That's just, you know, buy the equipment, train your people, and it'd be more cost effective for you.
Okay, so go on that line of thinking, Bill, somebody was asking about using off-duty firefighters, or off-duty cops. Would they just have to be trained? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they have to be trained and equipped.
Okay,
Yeah.
trained and equipped, right?
Yes.
Okay.
One of the things on that line,
Sorry.
we do use off-duty fire, mostly fire. We've got one deputy, but you don't just train them on the rescue side. You really need to train them on the lockout tagout. A lot of times they don't understand the what it takes to make a safe entry. And so you need to back all the way up to making sure the lockout was done correctly and that the hazards have been mitigated before you ever allow them to go in. And it's more training than just saying, hey, do you understand how this tripod works and how this harness works?
Thank you. Okay. The next, we're getting a lot of clarification needed on bodily entry, what that actually entails. Is it one finger? Is it the whole body? Can you please clarify and confirm? And then along secondary with that question, somebody specifically asked, for instance, if the attendant, you know, sticks their hand in or head in to do something, what is that? Does that mean that they're now an entrant? So can you please confirm and clarify all that?
Okay, just the standard says when any part of your body breaks the plane of the opening, you have made entry into a permit required confined space.
Simple as that, right, Bill?
Simple as that.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure because we are getting a lot of comments about it. So I just wanted to make sure that got confirmed. Okay. Let's see, moving on about, is there a minimum number, going back to the rescue, is there a minimum number of people needed to be considered a rescue team?
Okay, excellent question. There is no number for a minimum rescue team in OSHA. And I don't like using my opinion, but our rescue team is a minimum of 3 people. We've had up to 7, 8, or 9 people on a rescue team because of the entry, the hazards, and the environment that we were in. So I guess my opinion is a minimum of 3.
Okay.
Christy.
Yes.
Christy, you're doing a great job. Thank you. There was one that I wanted to follow up because I saw it come in a few times too. Was just about ventilation, Bill. Can you talk a
Okay.
little bit about ventilation in a space? There were some questions about, is there a method to determine how much air you need to push through? Are there tools to help with that? Anything you can do to spend a little more time on that would be helpful.
Okay. Well, ventilation is a main way to control hazards, and then you document that the ventilation works by air monitoring. Yeah, depends on the hazards that are potentially in the space. If it's a really high hazard, then you want to have a ventilation system, a lockout plan that works, a ventilation system that could exchange the air 6 times in an hour. That's a good standard kind of a ventilation plan. And so you would need to be able to know how many standard cubic feet the space holds, and how much, what cubic feet per minute your blower moves. You may need multiple blowers. You may need to do air blowing in on one side and being extracted out. That's kind of a balanced system. So it really just depends on the hazards and the complexity of the internals of the space. I don't know. That's the best I can do with that one, I guess.
No, I think that was really, there were some specifics in there and some also, you have to plan, right? You
Yeah,
have to do
that's
some
right.
math ahead of
That's
time,
right.
right? As a part of your preparation. Yeah, thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
Christy, can I ask another one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just because it was specific and I hadn't seen this term before. They were asking about response time for a rescue team for an attached situation or a detached entry situation. And I'm not familiar with that. Is that something you can speak to?
Uh, the way I think that question is being posed is attached is the entrant attached to a retrieval system, or are they unattached? I don't know, maybe whoever asked the question could clarify that. The OSHA requires you have a harness on and you have a retrieval system going outside the space. If there's a danger of entanglement, the standard allows you to remove the rope, but it never says you can remove your harness. So the difference there is on time is, if I'm your rescuer and you have removed your lifeline, we have no choice but to come in to get you. So if I come in and you have a harness on, I'm going to remove whatever lowered me in, and I'm going to hook it to you, and I'm going to call for them to raise you out. It's just that fast. If you've taken your harness off, then I have to come in and put a harness on you in a deep, dark hole and make sure it's on good enough that it doesn't come off. So, that's, and to take the harness off, everybody needs to know, the attendant, the entry supervisor, competent person, rescue team, everybody needs to know and agree.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I think this is an important question because they want to know, and basically it sounds like they want to know if it says, do we need a retrieval device for a non-permit space? So it sounds like they're asking about rescue, whether it's permit or non-permit. Is there a difference, or do you still need the same?
Okay, this gets into the, general industry fall protection is required at 4 feet, construction 6 feet, scaffold 10 feet, steel erection 15 or 30 feet. Well, confined space doesn't really even talk about that. It talks about the need for a mechanical retrieval system, and that's at 5 feet. And it doesn't, when you look at the 1910 standard or the construction standard, it really doesn't say, well, you're looking at permit spaces, as simple as that. It gives you the definition of a non-permit space, and it'll tell you how you can reclassify from a permit space back to a non-permit space for one entry. But it really doesn't, it doesn't talk about a non-permit space. The whole standard is directed at permit required confined spaces. So I would say if you have an entry that goes deeper than 5 feet, then you need to have mechanical retrieval.
Okay.
But again, that's on a permit space.
And then there was a question with that that I saw later. If you have 2 people and you only have 1 winch and one, how do you utilize that when you have 2 people in a space?
The meanest one in the hole gets out first. No, that's bad. I'm sorry. All right. So what's it for? The retrieval is different than saying everybody needs to be tied off and work at elevation. Everybody has to do that. Well, the retrieval system is to get somebody out. You should have a retrieval system for every worker in the space, because it's required if the entry is deeper than 5 feet.
Hey,
Okay.
sticking with that, Bill, can you talk a little bit about horizontal rescue? I've seen some of those questions come in. I think people are familiar more so with overhead, but
Right.
can you talk a little bit about horizontal?
Sure. The horizontal rescues can be as difficult as any vertical rescue, just depending on the size of the opening. To give an example, the mud drum on a boiler is about an 18-inch oval manway, and it doesn't get much bigger than that all the way through the mud drum. If we put the inspector in a harness and a lifeline and let him go in, and he's unresponsive, and we pull on the rope, we're just going to bind him up in the space and we won't be able to get him out. So, don't take horizontal entries lightly. You've got to have a plan that works. And one good plan is we shoot a line all the way through from one side to the other. We'll put wristlets on the entrant and be able to pull them out the opposite side from that they went in. Or if we've actually even put wristlets on a guy's ankles one time because there was no other way to get him out. So horizontals are broken down into 2 basic categories. You have ground level horizontal entries and elevated horizontal entries. And OSHA in the definitions defines an elevated entry as anything 4 feet or greater above the work surface.
Okay, and sticking with rescue, someone asked if you have on-site ready rescue available, and harnesses and all the SCBA that you might need. Should there be equipment accessible for each confined space entry point, or what does that look like?
That's an excellent question. I would say it depends on the potential hazards in the different spaces. There have been times where our rescue team, we provided rescue service in one plant over multiple entries at the same time with one rescue team. But if we have problems in one space, then everybody comes out of every entry because we're no longer available to provide the service to them. Does that make sense? Okay.
It makes sense to me, so I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
Good. And then somebody asked about using if a host employer allows a contractor to use the employer's entry permit, can they allow the contractor to use their permit if they're both working in the same permit confined space?
Yes. They can use the host permit if they have their own policy permit that would supersede the host, then they would go to the one that is safer, that they're more familiar with. But they can use their the host or the controlling contractor, not just the exposing contractor's permit. They had to be trained well enough to know whether or not the host permit lockout procedures and everything is really adequate.
Okay, thank you.
That's the challenge with using people that don't know much about OSHA and especially chemical plants and things.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, we keep going back to rescue. A lot of people have questions about rescue. Can you go over the difference quickly, I guess, between non-entry and entry rescue?
Oh, sure. I, I love non-entry rescue because I don't have any of my guys at risk. Non-entry rescue is, you know, we've come up with a system. You've got a tripod, you've got a lifeline connected to the entrance harness, and if we can, especially if we can see the entrant and we know that they're not going to be caught on something, then we'll pick up their lifeline and we'll hook our rope system to their lifeline and extract them using our rope system. So non-entry rescue is that's the ticket. You know, you don't have anyone other than the entrant that's exposed to the hazards. And the way I look at it, something caused that worker to have problems in the space. So if we can get them out without exposing anyone else to those potential hazards, we might not even know what it is. You know, most of the time we would, but you may not even know. It may have been something medically, a medical issue with them that had nothing to do with the confined space.
All right, Bill, you're doing a great job. Just by the way, if nobody said it to you, I just want to, everybody's saying what a great job you're doing. You're answering these great questions, and that's hard when you're not prepared. You don't know what questions you're going to get, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, sure.
All right, some questions that came through about training. What kind of certification, if any, do people need to get to be the ones to train their employees on confined space?
I wish I could say they have to go through a certification pro board class to be an instructor, but there's really not. It's like the HAZSWAPER standard. It basically says to teach it, you have to have been through it and have some kind of qualifications as an instructor to be able to present. So as long as you know what you're doing and you can identify the hazards and you can know what equipment's right, then you can be the trainer.
Okay, then that was simple. That was pretty good. So, because someone was talking about, or specific, like if they only have like 30-hour training, does that, qualify them? But basically what I heard you say was if they understand it well enough to share it and teach it, then it's okay. Since there's no specific training necessary.
Right. Well, there are train the trainer courses that companies have developed. We actually teach one, but there's nothing, I have to keep going back to the OSHA standard. What does the federal law say? And it does not require that you attend a train the trainer course to be an instructor. It requires that you have knowledge, skills, experience.
Yep. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's see. there's a lot of specific questions that people are asking specific to their own industry and or sites that they're on. So I'm trying, I know a lot of you who have written those in the chat. I'm trying to hit ones that are gonna address ones that everybody might have those questions to. So if I don't hit your specific question, I apologize, or maybe make it more generic that will allow us to apply it to more things. But I am trying to go through these. Can you go through reclassification of a permit confined space to a non-permit confined space?
Okay, that's 1910, 146C 5, 6, and 7. It basically says that the only hazard that you can eliminate to take a permit space back to a non-permit space is an atmospheric hazard. So if you can eliminate the atmospheric hazard with ventilation monitoring, you can prove that you've eliminated the hazard, then for that one entry, you can reclassify it from a permit space back to a non-permit space. And I just recommend that you read the standard and go to see, I may be wrong, maybe 4, 5, 6, 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there.
Okay. Thank you. And then somebody, this is a great question because I get this asked a lot. If I have permit required confined spaces, but my workers do not go into it, do I still need a confined space plan?
Yes. If you have a confined space, you have to have a confined space program. You can't just say, oh, we'll never go in, or we're only going to use contractors, our employees will never go in. You have to have a policy procedure that states how you're going to prevent them from going in.
Okay.
And that's actually specifically written in the standard like that.
Yeah. Okay. Talking about pits, when you have first of all, if you have multiple ladders to get out, do you still need some type of retrieval equipment for confined space rescue?
Okay, if it's an open pit with ladder access, that's what I'm kind of seeing as you're asking the question. Ladder access is restrictive, so that would, make it a confined space. Then you have to determine, is there a potential for the hazards that would make it permit required? There's no, and y'all can answer this as good as I can with, I've never seen in OSHA a requirement that says you have to have fall protection while going up or down a ladder. You have to use safe ladder access, keep your belt buckle, belly button in between the side rails, keep, 3 points of contact, have the correct angle of the ladder, correct extension past the point of contact. But if you're going to, in my impression of that, they look at a ladder as a way to get from point A to point B or point B to point A. Once you stop and you have to work on the ladder, then now it's a temporary work platform that could require fall protection. I don't know if that answered that question or not, because I kind of forgot the question while I was talking.
They were wanting to know if there's multiple ladders throughout the pit, if they still needed some type of retrieval system.
There's no number of anything like access ways or points.
Okay.
Battery's about to die.
Hopefully you'll still have us here. Okay.
Just for a couple more minutes.
Yeah, just a couple more. Okay, so some other things regarding the general industry and construction. I have 2 questions that I want to go back to on. One was, somebody asked, does one supersede the other when you're in a confined space? So does general industry or construction depend? Does it depend on certain things?
It depends on what task you're doing.
Okay.
If I'm doing a construction related task, if I'm going in to just replace agitator blades and I'm putting in the same new blades as the old blades, they're just new, then that's a, ooh, I don't know what happened here. That's a general industry maintenance issue. If I'm going in and I'm going to upgrade, retrofit, change, improve, then now I'm under the construction standard. If I'm putting in a new piece of equipment, then that's a construction standard. So that's the easiest way to know whether you're under construction or general industry. And that doesn't really matter if it's confined space or the crane standard, right? It's basically the same thing.
Okay, and you alluded to this, and you may have answered this, but I'm going to ask the question again, or ask the question. When a construction company is working within an existing industrial facility, which regulation would they follow? And does that again depend on the task that they're doing?
It depends on the task. Typically, the construction company coming in is going to be under the construction standard unless they've just been hired to come in and do a basic maintenance procedure.
Okay, interesting. Okay, this is an odd question somebody asked. Can a crane be used as a retrieval when there's no space above an entrance for a tripod?
Okay. The only time a crane hook can be used, if it's been placed in position above the entry point, the crane is turned off and the keys are out of the ignition and the operator is out of the seat. It can be used as an anchor point only.
Interesting.
Can't
Okay.
use any kind of motorized anything to raise somebody out of a confined space, because if you hit the stop button and the crane drum keeps turning a little bit, you could pull somebody in half. So you want man-powered rescue systems only and man-rated equipment. That's a big thing. We say you go to the deck of a crane, you get a choker that's rated for 60,000 pounds, and you go and use that for your fall protection. It's not rated by the manufacturer for somebody's life to be attached to it. Then you can't do that.
Right, okay. Okay. Some people have been asking about the permits and where do they get them, or how do they get them approved, or do they need to be approved? Who writes them out? Those kind of questions. Can you
Okay.
elaborate on that?
All right, so the general industry standard and the construction have an example of a permit in the standard. So if you don't have one, you could just simply download that and use it, modify it to meet your specific industry. But yeah, or if you hardly ever go into confined spaces yourself and you use a contractor and they come over with a permit, then you could use the contractor permit as long as it meets the requirements for your entry.
Okay, and I'm sorry, did you say if somebody needs to approve that in any way?
Well, construction would be general industry. General industry, and they don't say who has to approve it, just like they don't say who has to identify the confined spaces. It just says you have to identify them. So it puts it over to the owner or the host employer of how to do those make those determinations.
Okay.
Dee.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to make sure that we had time for one question on the four gas meters or meters period, Bill. There's a lot of comments that came in even early on, certainly when you were highlighting that atmospheric hazards are the largest killer, right? And just if there's any additional things you want to say about meters, about sensors, sensor replacement, interference with other, chemicals in a space, just based on your background and knowledge. Is there something you want to share on that?
So for our rescue team, we use Industrial Scientific's Ventix MX4 meters. It's a multi-gas meter, tests for oxygen, percent LEL, CO and H2S, typical 4-gas meter. You can take any sensor out and put a sensor in for a specific chemical. The reason we use Industrial Scientifics is because there's a safety supplier 2 miles down the road that keeps the sensors and the pumps and everything on the shelf. We don't have to send them back to the manufacturer. So just because I use Industrial Scientifics doesn't mean it's better than your Draeger or your Sensodyne or your anything else.
Access.
Okay, again, I kind of
Great.
forgot what the
Yes.
question was, so hopefully that answers.
Yeah, no, I think just the reminders of getting them calibrated, right? Changing the
Mhm.
sensor out, all of those things are really critically important. Great. Christy, do you have maybe one or two more that we want to throw Bill's way? You're doing a great job, Bill.
Yeah, Bill is doing excellent. And again, I apologize if we haven't hit some of these people's questions, because there's over 200 questions in here that we're trying to
Yeah.
sort through. And somebody gave me a great suggestion that I should have used ChatGPT to help sort it all out, but I didn't. So next time, that's what we'll do next time.
That's right.
But
Hey, I just want to make Hillary proud. Okay.
I'm sure you're doing a great job of doing that. There's no
Whatever.
need to. Okay, well, this is somebody asked, does an attendant need fall protection if they're next to a 6-foot deep manhole? So if the attendant is there doing watch for a confined space of the manhole, do they also need fall protection since they are standing right there next to it?
All right. If it's general industry, if you have an employee that has a potential to fall 4 feet or more, they must be provided with some method of protection. It could be a personal fall arrest system. It could be a handrail, hole cover. If same thing with construction, only is 6 feet. So that's the technical standard answer is there a potential that they could fall either more than 4 feet or 6 feet, depending on the industry that they're in? What I have seen, and I don't know that I could document this, so opinions here again. We train our rescue team to where we have one person that's going to be pretty much the safety person over a vertical entry that's going to, hey guys, we got an open hole, stay back. Because if we were all tied off with body harnesses and lifelines and retrieval system or retractables, we wouldn't be able to do our job. So I can't document that. I don't, so I hate to say it, but that's just the way our rescue team works, is we put someone as kind of like the spotter for our team. And typically we'd probably use the attendant that was there and just tell them, hey, this is your job. Don't let anybody go in if they're harness it known right. And we're going to double check all the systems and we're going to be aware of the open hole.
All right, I appreciate that answer. Do we want to end on it, or we have one more? What would you like me to do, Hillary? Or Anissa, where are we on time?
I know. I think we've hit a good amount. Christy, you did a great
Yeah.
job.
Right, thank you.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
thanks, Bill.
Sure.
And I'll turn, Hillary, you're ending.
Yeah, I'm gonna close this out here, I think. So Bill, thank you so much
Don't fire me, boss.
representing so Bill Foster is one of our instructors at the OSHA Training Institute Education Center at Georgia Tech. And we're, as you can tell, really, really lucky to have him and thank him for his time today. You can find folks like Bill who are incredibly well versed in this particular topic at all of the OSHA Training Institute Education Centers across the nation. We're a network of 35, and we're going to put the map back up and then drop it into the chat to help you find your most local education center on the screen. And again, we'll put in the chat a direct link to a class for confined space. It's longer than an hour and a half, obviously, covering a lot more information that is available to you. It's called the OSHA 2264. Again, just as we conclude, thank you so much for taking time to join us today. Please take a moment to complete the evaluation form that is going to pop up. If you're here in Zoom with us, it's going to come up automatically. If you join from YouTube, it's going to be emailed automatically once we close. And a PDF of the materials. Many, again, have asked. Materials will be distributed to those of you that attended today. We've got your contact information, as well as a link to the recording of this, so you can watch it again, share it with others in your network, and continue your learning. We hope to see you at a future Ed Center class, wherever you are here in the country. Thanks so much for your time today, folks. Thanks again, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.